Okay, so let's go ahead and begin. Okay, so first of all, I sent an email to everyone because some people had left the room when I announced this last time, but the ALU, right? Remember last time, hardware number 4, you build the ALU and also the immediate generator. Well, unlike the previous assignments and also for the immediate generator, where you come up with your own test cases, for the ALU, we provide the test cases. Okay, they're on Canvas. If you go to the meeting 7, for the ALU, and just go way to the end, you'll see there's a table. Okay, so it's sort of a good news, bad news. The good news, you don't have to think of the test cases, we're giving them to you. The bad news is there's like 30 test cases. You know, for each operation, there's like several test cases. So there's quite a few test cases. But if your ALU runs those test cases correctly, that should mean that your ALU logically is fine. Now, you could still run into problems when you put everything together if your ALU, isn't a single case statement, generating a mux. Like if you've got some chain of circuitry, then, when you put the ALU with everything else, you may run into a timing issue. Okay, but the test cases, if your ALU passes those test cases, it should mean logically it's okay. All right, the other thing I wanted to mention was I put the activities that you finished last class, and when I scored those, I only looked at the AND instruction closely. Like I graded that very closely. Some of you, I know some scores were like 90-something%, and I took off a percent if there was like a red line missing. And I did that on purpose because when you generate these diagrams, and remember, eventually you're going to have a diagram for each instruction because you need that for the control unit that you're going to design in a couple of weeks. Well, when you're making those diagrams for the instructions, you have to be meticulous. You can't leave stuff out, especially you can't leave out enables, you can't leave out, selects the muxes, you can't leave out the ALU fun. Okay, those things, if you leave them out, it's not going to work. The instruction is not going to be executed. Okay, so you have to really take the time and be careful when you're doing those diagrams for each of the instructions. Now, the AND instruction, the solution to it is on Canvas because it's the same as the sub instruction that we did in class, except the ALU is different. The ALU fun is a different code. That's the only difference. Data path, all the other control signals are exactly the same. For immediate, it's the same diagram as add immediate that we did in class, except the ALU fun is a different code. Okay. So that's one of the things, when you start to do these diagrams for the instructions, that's one of the things you should notice is that there's going to be a group of instructions where everything's the same except for, 1 or 2 things. Okay, so even though there's 30 some odd real instructions, there's not that many diagrams because you'll be able to do like the sub diagram and then just kind of put a note and say, oh, when it's an and, the only thing that's different is the ALU fun. You just make little notes on that same diagram. Okay. All right. Also on the board here, I have the schedule for what's left this quarter, and also I have on the other side of the board, what's left as far as assignments due. After I'm finished with the lecture, I'll make some comments about that. Okay. What the lecture is going to be on today is, at the end of today's lecture, you'll have enough information where you can do hardware 5, which is modeling the branch control generator or branch condition generator, and also the branch address generator. And just like on Tuesday, we're going to go through the data path and the control signals for a handful of signals, okay, namely 3 branch instructions and a couple of jump instructions. Okay, now when we get to figuring out the data path and control signals, I think it will go a little faster than it went last class, because one, you've seen examples of this, so you have some idea of what it's going to look like. And then two, you'll see that several of these instructions basically have the same data path and control signals. It's just, little variances. So I will be taking some shortcuts, but if I take a shortcut and you don't understand, please let me know and I'll be more, I won't take the shortcut. Okay, so first thing, and we talked about much of this here. First of all, remember that when you did a software assignment, I think it was software 2, when you were writing assembly language using branch instructions, at that time we looked at the instruction manual and we found out that there's over a dozen branch instructions. There's probably like 16 or somewhere around there, quite a few. But most of those branch instructions are pseudo instructions. Okay, and remember, the processor only processes real instructions. So of all those branch instructions that we have, only 6 are real instructions. Okay, these 6 that you see here. And on top of that, these 6 real instructions are in pairs, what we call mutually exclusive pairs. Right? Branch if less than and branch if greater than or equal to. Those are pairs, right? Because if one is true, the other is false. Same thing, this is branch if less than unsigned and branch if greater than or equal to unsigned. Okay, so the only difference between these 2 pairs is this pair is treating the data as signed, this treating the data as unsigned. And then we have branch if equal to and branch if not equal to. Okay, so you'll see because there's these 3 distinct exclusive pairs, that means that in our hardware, okay, namely this branch condition generator, we only need to do 3 comparisons. So the Verilog or system Verilog code that goes into this ECG is just going to be 3 if then else, or excuse me, 3 if else statements. Right? You'll have 1 if else for this comparison, 1 for this comparison, 1 for this comparison. Okay, also last class, right, we talked about how to model this immediate generator, and we saw that at 5 immediates. If you were to look in the instruction manual, you would see that all branch instructions have B-type immediates. Okay, jump instructions, there's 2 real jump instructions, JAL and JALR. One's a J-type, one's an I-type. And you'll see how that affects the data. And then as we talked about before, immediate, right, in assembly language jargon, just means a number, right, an integer. And in the branch and jump commands, the immediate that are in the instructions, those numbers can either be positive or negative. Okay, if it's a positive immediate, that's for either jumping or branching ahead in the program, right? If it's a negative immediate, that means that's a branch or a jump that you're going back to a prior instruction in your program. Okay, and the way it accomplishes this, the way the branches and jumps accomplishes, either going back in the program or ahead in the program, is by adding an offset to the current output of the program counter. Because what do we have at the output of this program counter? What does the program counter provide us? This is probably the 10th time I've asked this question. What's here at the output of our program counter? Address of the instruction. Right, the address of the instruction that's going to be executed. Address. Instruction. Okay, so if you want to either move ahead in a program or move back in a program, this is what you have to modify. Okay, and that's what these instructions do. The immediate either adds to that address to jump ahead, or it subtracts from that address to go back. Okay. All right, so let's, and then just the last thing that we said several times, in RARs for these immediates, you have to use a label, it won't accept the number. But you'll see, in order to understand what's going on in the hardware, you got to think of this immediate as a number. Okay, in fact, you can see here that for these different instructions that we're going to go through, we're just going to give the label the immediate an actual number.
Oh, where does it check if the immediate you're trying to jump by is a multiple of 4?
Oh, well, there's not, let's see, there's not like a circuit that like checks it. But in this immediate generator, when you do the format that we have in the instruction manual, it's going to give an offset that's divisible by 4. So yeah, that's actually something I think that's come up in the past where, you know, when a person goes to check their otter, you know, when it's all connected together. I don't know if I mentioned before, but Dr. Hummel came up with this file. It's called the all test file. It's a mem file that you use to test your otter circuitry. Like it will test every instruction. And if there's something wrong, it will give an error code. I think it's 22C hex, if I remember correct. Actually, I do remember because I saw that error code quite a bit when I was trying to get mine to work. Well, anyway, if you had, like, say, you know, you used that handout we gave you and you thought you had pieced all the immediates together correctly, and let's say you simulated it and you just missed something, you know, it really wasn't quite right. Well, that could cause a problem because now maybe because that immediate's not formatted correctly, maybe it will give an offset that's not divisible by 4. And if that happens, it's probably what will happen is it will just lock up right here because, you know, there's no instruction at, you know, anything that's not divisible by 4. But you know, to answer your question directly, there's not like a circuitry that's checking that.
Is there a data for is out of the immediate generator, is there like a signal at each type except there's just no data at the ones except for the type that we're dealing with?
No, you see, again, remember, we said that this immediate generator is operating in parallel, which means that there's always data at these outputs. There's always data
we don't use.
Right, exactly. It's just, you know, the downstream circuitry decides what's getting used and what's not getting used. But yeah, there's data on all these lines at all times. Okay, so let's I saw you imagining things. Let's go ahead and start looking at the data path along with the control signal. So we're going to start with this instruction here. So, oh, and again, just like on Tuesday, I think it would be beneficial to be looking at the instructions in the manual so you can better follow along and also answer my questions. So which branch instruction is this? What does BGE mean? Greater than or equal. Yeah, so it will branch if greater than or equal. Okay, so what's this X7? The destination register. Is it? You look at the instruction. No, this was a destination register for some of the instructions.
Oh, no, it's not.
Yeah, for what we were doing last time, yeah, this would be the destination register, but here it's what?
Source 1.
Yeah, source 1. And what's this? Source 2. And then this is our immediate. Okay, so just for sake of example, we're going to say that the program counter is at 80. This immediate is integer minus 40. We're going to say that the contents of register 7 is 10, and the contents of register 9 is 5. Okay. So let's go ahead and start, and we start at the output of the program counter, because again, that's where the address of the instruction to be executed is at. And we're saying that this address is 80. Now, I could have picked any number here as long as it was divisible by what? 4, right? So I'm, you know, just picking 80, but I could have easily picked 76 or 40 or what have you, but I couldn't pick 79 or 83 or anything not divisible by 4. Okay. Okay, so then that address for our instruction is here at the address one input of our memory module. Now, what do we want the read enabled to equal? 1, because it's active high. When that's active high and at the time of the 0 1 clock edge, what's going to happen? What's going to be at the output of this memory module? Address 1. Not an address. Because what's inside this memory module? Instructions, right? The code segment. So it's going to take the what at this address and put it here. The contents, which is the instruction. Okay, so this is where the instruction is. Right, the address is here at the input of the memory module. The actual instructions at the output of the memory. So again, here's the instruction. Okay, so the instruction is it goes to the reg file as well as the immediate generator. Now, for this instruction, what matters here at the reg file? Does address 1 matter? Yes. Yeah, right? Because we have a source 1. In fact, what is the data on address 1? 7, right? Exactly. Good. Okay, does address 2 matter? Yes. Because it's an RS2. And what's the data there? 9. Does write address matter?
No.
No, why not? Yeah, we don't have a destination register in the instruction, right? So we're not writing to anything. So again, there's data there, but we're not going to use it, so we don't care. Okay, now we do care about the immediate. We have an immediate. Okay, so that's in the data. Okay. All right. What's going to be at the output of RS1? The contents of register 7. Okay. So the way to express contents of a register, like in a diagram like this, is to put the X before the number. Okay. I don't know if it was this section or my other section, but there was some groups that, you know, they had the right number here for the address, but then they just put the same numbers, right? But it's not that number, it's the contents of that number registered. Now, also, we're given what the actual contents are. So in parentheses, I'm going to put what's in that register 10. Okay, how about RS2? What's going to be here? The contents of register 9. Contents of register 9, which is what? 5. Okay. Okay, and you see that data goes to the inputs of this module that you're going to be building today. It goes to the inputs of this branch condition generator. So this is where the comparison is going to be made. Okay, this is where you're going to have, you know, if else statement, you know, 3 if else statements. Okay, so notice there's 3 outputs. There's a branch equal output, a branch less than output, and a branch less than unsigned output. So what do you think we're going to have here for one of these outputs? 0 for which one? Yeah, the middle one, right? Right, because this is a branch if greater than or equal to, and it's comparing these 2 registers. It's seeing if this contents of this register is greater than or equal to the contents of this register. Right, it's greater, which would mean if this is a branch greater than or equal to, it'd be a 1, but because that's a less than, it's a 0. Because if it's not greater than or equal to, wait, did I just say that, hon? Let's back up. Yeah, it'd be a 1. If this was a branch greater than or equal to, it'd be a 1. But because it's greater than or equal to, the less than would be 0, because right, it's not less than. That makes sense. So sorry, why is it the middle? It's the middle one because that's the one that goes with the greater than or equal to, right? So we evaluate this by looking at the contents of this register against the contents of that register, right? We're saying, is the contents of register 7 greater than or equal to the contents of register 9? Which it is, right? But this is not a branch greater than or equal to, it's a branch less than, right? So since it's not less than, it's 0. Okay. All right, but we're not finished. the next thing is, here at the immediate generator, for branch instruction, we have a B type immediate. So the immediate that's at this V type output of the immediate generator, that's the one that matters. That's where the -40 is going to be. Again, that's provided that, things were formatted correctly when you built this. Also notice that another input to the branch address generator is connected over here where the program count is. Okay, so at this input, you're going to have the address of the instruction that we're currently on, right? So the address of the instruction that's being executed, which in this case is the branch of greater than or equal to. So what the branch address generator is going to do is it's going to add those two inputs together. It's just going to take the address from the program counter and add this immediately. Okay, that's going to act like an offset. So it's just going to take this address of 80, add -40 to it, and put that at the output. So we're going to have an output on a branch output of 40. Okay, and then that data goes over here. Okay, to input 2 of the MUX that's in front of our program counter register. So what would I want PC source to equal in order to get that offset to?
Wait, don't we not want it to offset because it's not less than? The X7 is greater than the X5. Oh, wait, no, it's branch greater than.
Yeah, this is branch greater than or equal to. So when that's 0, we do want a branch. All right. If this was a branch less than command, then we wouldn't want a branch.
I was looking at the less than label on the BCG and
Yeah, it makes it it's easy to get like it reversed because we don't have all 6 outputs here, right? We just got one output of the pair. Okay, and that's because that's the minimal amount of outputs we need for this module because these are mutually exclusive pairs. Okay. Now, let me say one more thing before I answer your question because it relates to what Landon just asked. Notice that these 3 outputs go to the control unit decoder. So when you design this control unit decoder, you'll see that in there, it takes care of all 6 of those instructions. Okay, so, this could have been designed a different way. I mean, this could have been designed where there was 6 outputs, one for each of those 6 real instructions. But instead, we used a minimum, well, I say we, Dr. Hummel and the other doctors that designed all this, they used the minimum amount of outputs based on the mutual exclusivity of those 3 pairs. And then inside the control decoder, they take care of the 6 separate instructions, okay? So there's, in fact, I'll write it right here. There's a to be continued. All right. I mean, you're going to see more of what's happening with this when we get to the control decoder. Okay, so this isn't like the whole story, but as far as what you have to design for this, it's just for these 3 outputs. Okay, did you have a question?
Yeah, if X7 equals X9, would that would change by making PR equal 1?
Let's hold off on that. The quick question is, for each of these instructions, we only care about one output for this module. But again, when you design the control unit decoder, that's when you got to start thinking how you're thinking. Okay, because like I said, there's a to be continued.
Okay, so sorry. So what's the reason for having the branch added?
Oh, what's the reason here?
Yeah.
Okay, the reason for this module, the branch address generator, is this is the hardware. This is the hardware that's going to add an offset to the current instruction address, and that's what gets the program to branch, right? Because here's where I'm at. See this 8. Do you guys have a question? I don't mind talking stuff. It's just a little distracting. Yeah. No, it's all right. If you got something though, ask so other people can hear. Okay, so this is the address of the instruction that this BG is at, right, like in a program?
Yeah.
And now we want to, branch to another instruction, and since this is -40, that's an instruction that's ahead of where this branch instruction is. In fact, we can figure out how many instructions in front, right? Because if we're using -40, how many instructions does that relate to? Because remember, each instruction is separated by 4 in address, right? So how would you figure out how many instructions that is?
4 divided by 4 divided by 10.
Divided by 10?
Oh, sorry, 4 divided by 4.
Yeah, which equals 10, right? Exactly. So you see, this would branch 10 instructions ahead of where this instruction is. And it does that. The way the hardware does that is by this module creating an offset, right? It's taking these two and adding them together to get the new address. So we'll go from address 80 to address 40. Okay, so now we're this far with the data. Now, how do we get this data here to the output of the month? What does PC source have to do? 2. And that's 2. Right, then we'll have that, see that 40 will be right there, ready to go into our program counter register. And then what does PC write have to be? 1. Right, and that will change the output of our program counter from 80 to 40, and that's what causes the branch.
For the label 1 being -40, so is it jumping like up in the like line code?
Right, yeah, because when you write a assembly language program like in RARs, that first assembly instruction, that's at address 0. That's always the case. The first instruction is always at address 0. Then the next instruction is going to be address 4, then 8, 12, and so on.
But okay, so the label is gonna point to that that line. Does
Well,
like
Well, not quite. This, sorry to interrupt, but let me say real quick. This number is going to affect the address that this instruction is on. Right? Like this is the instruction it's on. Now it's taking that immediate, adding it to it, and that gives the new address that it's going to branch to.
is the like assembly code like being transformed into machine code deciding that it's gonna be like -40? Like
Well, yeah. Again, when you're in RARs and you write your assembly language, remember you hit the assemble, what is it? Like, it's like a wrench or something. Well, that's what it's doing, right? It's taking your assembly language and it's putting into machine code, and because then you can make the mem file to run the auto. Now, the -40 is coming from this immediate generator. It's based on when you made this and you followed the format that you were given, remember, where you had to take these bits and you had to replicate some of them and concatenate. As long as you do that correctly, it's going to generate the right immediate.
So it's kind of make good. So a branch label, it's not a register.
No, this is just a number. It just represents a number. The reason for the label is just to make it easier for the program. So, like we said before, RARs requires a label. Like if you try to put -40 in RARs, it's not going to like it. But in order to understand what's happening with the hardware, you have to know this number. You have to treat it like a number because the hardware doesn't know what a label is. Right? What RARs is going to do when you put the label there, its software is going to figure out what that number is, right? Because it's going to look at where the label is, where the instruction is, and figure out the difference. But did you have a question or?
Yeah, so my question was like, basically, so what you're saying is that the assembler is taking our labels and like generating a number offset for that based on the amount of length of each instruction. And so
Well-
the machine code already has that handled as a number essentially, and not as a label that we have to translate in the hardware to a number. That's like handled.
Well, what RAR software is doing is wherever you put the labels, it's figuring out like the difference in address between where the label is in the branch instruction and where the, where the label is that you're branching to, like what address that's at. But it's the hardware that's figuring out what that number is.
Yeah.
I mean, this piece of hardware is generating this number.
Yeah.
So it's just.
Yeah, RARS is like a separate thing. RARS is what requires a label. Hardware doesn't require a label. In fact, it doesn't know what a label is. Right? So in RARS, they made it like label approved, if you will, to make it easier for the program. Because otherwise you'd have to always like figure out what that number is if you edited things, right? Because you would change the line numbers and therefore the addresses of the instructions. So the labels in RARS is just there as a convenience, a readability.
It's just different in like how they're represented, right? It's
How what is represented.
like, yeah, in the hardware, it's like calculated as a number or whatever, and then
Right.
like, yeah, in RARS, it's for readability and represented for something that.
Yeah, the whole label part is in RARS. It's not in your order. Yeah, your order doesn't know what a label is.
So wouldn't it be more efficient then for the like immediate for, I think. Yeah, for the, like an immediate generator to like basically take a smaller number, so like the number of instructions you have to jump and then like multiply it by 4.
Okay, no, that's a really good question, and it gets into like the whole idea behind, that sheet of paper I gave you that shows how you format the different immediates, like you take certain bits of these 25 bits and replicate it and attach it to others, right? What you did to build that.
Yeah.
See, that's all based on the foundation of RISC-V. Okay, there's like a starting point of RISC-V that you can then like suit to your needs because it's open source. I had the very same question or very similar question that you just asked to Dr. Hummel, when I was looking at this. I was kind of like, well, how come, they put these immediates together in this kind of haphazard way? You take this bit and doesn't seem to be much logic to it, no pun intended. And what he gave me and what I can give you if you're interested is there's a link to a book on Amazon. It's called RISC-V Reader. And it basically gives you like the nervous system of RISC-V. So based on like the foundations of RISC-V, that's what, that's where that funny formatting for the different intermediates comes from. Okay, so it goes back to like, the ground floor, if you will, of RISC-V. Okay. All right, so ready to move on? Okay, what if we have the same instruction, but I just swap the contents of the register? So instead of having register 7 as 10, it's now 5. Instead of having register 9 as 5, it's now 10. What would be different in this diagram? So
BRLT would be a 1.
that is correct. That would be a 1. And then what else would be different?
PC source would be 0.
Right. Why is PC source 0 now?
Because it's you're not branching.
You're not branching. Exactly. See, this would be a 0. And then we're just going to go to the next instruction. So this data path would matter, right? Because we're taking the address we had previously, adding 4 to it, and then that would be our next instruction, right? If we're not branching, we're going to the next instruction in the program. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so let's look at the next instruction. Now, this is where I'm going to take a shortcut. Instead of erasing everything like I did on Tuesday, I'm going to just leave it the way it is, but then modify how it would change for this instruction, because you'll see most of it's the same. Okay, well, let's get rid of this. Let's go back to, when it was branching. Okay, so now let's look at this instruction. So what is this instruction? Branch if less than. What's this? Source one. What's this? Source two. And then we have our immediate. And again, we're gonna assume PC's at 80. Now our immediate is a plus 60. Contents of register 10 to 12, contents of register 12 is a 14. Okay, so this would still be at 80. Data path, same coming into address 1, this would still be a 1. Now we would have that instruction at this output. Okay, what would change here on address 1? What is address 1 going to be now? 10? Is that the 10? Yep, you're right, 10. And then what would this address be? Well, do we have a right address? Nope. Okay, we have an immediate, so that would come into our immediate generator, or we care about it. But now this would be what, instead of minus 40? It'd be 60. Okay, up here we have register 10, register 12, and then what's the contents? What's the contents of 10? Well, it's 12 here and 14 here. So what would we have at our output of our BCG? Be a 1. It would be a 1, right? Because contents of register 10 is less than contents of register 14. So our bridge of less than would be a 1. What would we have at the output of our branch address generator here? What would this be? 140, right? Because just add them. So this would be 140. That would come up here. We would still, we're branching, right? Since it was less than. So PC source would be 2. So this would now be 140. And when we have this activated, the write would happen. And now we go from address 80 to address 140. So we would jump, we would branch ahead. How many instructions would we branch ahead? 15, right? Because you would just take the difference, divide by 4. Okay. So any questions on that one? All right. So let's go. Oh, let me ask you this here. We have these two pair that treat the data as signed. We have these two pair, which are the same, except this pair treats the data as unsigned. So what differences would we have if we had either of these unsigned ones instead of the signed ones? Like, where would the difference be?
It'd be in the branch condition generator, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? Because see, for here, the comparison you do, you know, the if statement that you do is going to treat these as signed, right? The comparison here is going to be the same comparison, but you're treating this as unsigned. So remember last class, we talked about how Vivado or Verilog, System Verilog, what have you, defaults to unsigned. But if you want to change it to signed, you just put the $sign and sign in front of that input. Well, that's going to be the difference in the Verilog code between these two. Right? One, you're not going to have the $sign signed. This one you won't have it, and this one you will. Okay. Oh, and then, you know, the other difference is you could use this output here, not this output. Okay. All right, let's do the next one. Okay, what kind of instruction is this? Branch not equal. What do we have here? RS1. What do we have here? RS2. This is our immediate. Again, we're assuming the program counter's at 80. Now the immediate is plus 120. Here's the contents of the two registers. So again, I'm not going to erase everything. I'm just going to modify what we already have. So we're at 80. It goes to the address of the memory module. Want to read, so this is going to be 1. Now that branch not equal instruction is gonna be here at the output. Okay, what is address one gonna be now?
20.
20? What's address two gonna be? 24? Okay, so at the outputs here, you get the contents of register 20, contents of register 24. 20. So what's gonna be here? What's the contents of register 20? Yeah, that way you don't have to keep turning around. Make my neck all sore. And what's gonna be here? 2. Okay, and we got another B immediate, but this time it's gonna be 120. Right? Did I say that right? 120. Okay, so what are we gonna have for an output of our BCG? Yeah. Right, 0, because they're not equal, right? Yeah, 1 and 2. So this would be a 0. Okay, and since they're not equal, we will branch. So this matters. This will now be 200. Right, and over here, you would still want this to be a 2. And then DC write would have to be a 1 that actually writes that address to the output of the program counter. And we would go from address 80 to address 200. Yes. So how many instructions is that ahead? 30. 30, right? It'd just be 120 divided by. That all make sense? Okay, so we've done all the branches. Now we've got some jumps to do. Now, for the jumps, the data paths are quite a bit different than the branches, so I am going to erase what we have here and start fresh. Now, did you want to take a 5-minute break at this point, or you want me to keep going? Do you want to take a 5-minute break as I erase this? Yeah. Okay, why don't you come back at 5 of, and by that time I'll have it all erased, and we'll start the jumps. Okay, I'll be erasing. Does Brian? Are these last week. And so he pulled down our color. I told him about, actually, for modeling, and I know what you mean by pull up, but as far as modeling and in Verilog, you don't have to think about that. It's like, it must take care of
It doesn't make sense. Yeah. I don't have a particular reason why it doesn't, but like, cause like. The TBC for this is if going away.
I haven't gotten this in.
No, these outputs are going to a combination. I mean, the control unit is made out of both an FSM and a decoder. You know, the decoder is combination of FSM sequential. These 3 outputs specifically just go to the decoder. Now, there's other bits of an instruction that goes to the FSM. Like if you look at the diagram, you will see specific bits. You know, the one thing, again, that I'll add here, and maybe it, maybe what's troubling me is all things we talked about, okay, because, you know, like I said earlier, this could have been designed differently. This basically, instead of just having 3 outputs, 1 for each pair, you could have had this where there's 6 outputs for each one of those real instructions. Well, like, just like, the way this is done, the control, like inside the control unit, when you have a branch where you it's gonna look at both this being 1 and this being 0 in order for it to.
But these are not like some.
Allow the instruction to happen. The way it allows the instruction to happen is by selecting the So yeah, I think maybe. I mean, maybe what you did not probably we get rid of it. So really, it's like If this one is just written, it's gonna be hard to judge on our list. Okay, yeah, no, yeah.
I feel like that's one.
The equal will be zero. Yeah, inside the control, and it would be like, okay, if it's not, it's not like that, and it's not equal, then third party. Yeah, yeah. Again, like when I was first at this, I had the same type issues like with Dr. Homo. I went like. They're all done. And like, oh, I tried to just make it as, like less code as possible at this point. But as you're gonna see, the control unit modules are so much code to. That just having more code there isn't that big of a deal, where you can get by with your tools. And plus, also just because 2 assignments per week, you know, make it simpler. This, you're gonna have like 2 weeks. So yeah, you kind of like switch where the complexity is. Well, that'd be. Okay, so this whole, the third one is already good. That's a good question. Well, it depends. As far as I know, it depends how you code it in Verilog. Because like in Verilog, if you initialize all your outputs to something in 0 at the beginning, well, then when you're writing like an if statement or a case statement, so you don't have to put outputs that are not equal to 1 to 0. But if you don't initialize outputs to 0 to begin with, then like in an iterative case, you have to list all the outputs and specify what they have to be. Because that's a common thing that sometimes people will not initialize to 0, then in like the case or if they'll leave out any outputs that are equal to 0. And it causes like a, like an intermittent condition in Verilog, because it might work sometimes, it might work, depending on how it takes that undefined values. Thank you. Okay.
One question. So when we're in the media generator to the back. No, this is. Generator from the memory into the connection.
Well, that's what's going on when you take these 25 bits here. And you give them 30
Formatting will make. Okay, yeah, I didn't work on these.
Again, like I mentioned in class today, the reason why it's like all funky, you know, is because of the like foundation of risk.
Yeah, it has to reorganize all that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thanks.
Okay, I think it's time to go ahead and get started again. And those are kind of games. Okay, so we're gonna look at this jump instruction here. Okay, JAL. So what is the JAL instruction? If you don't know, you can find out by looking in the instruction manual. Well, first of all, what kind of branch is a jump? Unconditional, right, exactly. A jump is an unconditional. So if you look at the JAL instruction in the manual, it says an unconditional branch with offset and link. Now, offset is nothing new because the offset is just talking about this intermediate where the label is, right? That's just the amount that is going to change the output of the program counter. So that's what's meant by offset. You have those with branches. But what's new with this jump is the link, and that's what this L stands for. Okay, L stands for link. And what the link is that we're going to save the address of the next instruction that's after the jump. And we're going to put that in our registry. And the reason why you might want to do that is because after you're finished with whatever you jump to, you may want to go back to the instruction right after where the jump was. Now, there's a couple of important things in this regard. And an important thing is this here, is that address, right, which is going to be the program counter +4, because that's where the next instruction would be, that's going to overwrite whatever register you send it to. right? It's gonna save it in a register that's in the reg file. And if you have data in that register that's important that you don't want to lose, well, you don't want to write to it. So if you write that address, right, it's gonna overwrite what you had there previously. So that's something you always have to be cautious of. That if you're going to save that PC+4 address, you gotta make sure that the register you're putting it into doesn't have something that you don't wanna lose, you know, some data that you don't wanna lose. Now, what you can do if you don't wanna have to worry about losing any data is you can just write that address to register 0, right? Because what's special about register 0? It's always 0. So if you write something to it, it's just gonna make whatever you wrote to it 0. Okay, so essentially, if you don't care about that PC+4 address and you don't wanna risk overwriting some data, just send it to register 0. And in fact, that's what the jump command does. Okay, when you just use a J like we've been doing, you know, like J label in your programs, that's sending this PC+4 address to register 0 because, you know, a lot of times when you have a jump, it's just like at the end of your program, right? You're jumping back and there's nothing after it. So, you know, you don't need that address, right? That PC+4.
I think you need to move your camera.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for telling me. I always forget. Here we go. Thank you. Okay, so that's what the link is all about, okay? All right, so let's go ahead now and let's actually see what the data path is. So let's see, here we're gonna start at a program count of 120. I just changed it to 120 to be something different. I could have kept it 80. Okay, so this is our address of our instruction to be executed. It gets to address 1. What does read enable have to be? A 1. That will put the instruction here at the output of our memory module. Okay, so what do we care about as far as inputs of our reg file? Oh, actually, we should have looked at the instruction and seen what this is. What is this here? This X16.
The right destination.
That's the destination, right? That's where we're going to send this PC+4 address. So this is a destination register, and of course, this is our immediate. Okay, so now, what's gonna matter here? What addresses? WA, right? Because we're only writing to a destination register. We're not using any source register. So we don't care about address 1 or address 2. Okay, we just care about the right address and what data is gonna be on the right address. 16. Okay, and then we also have our immediate generator that matters here. Now, what type of immediate is a JAL immediate? J type, yeah, I wrote it on the board, but again, you can just look in the instruction manual to see that it's J. The J type output matters from the immediate generator that goes into one of the inputs of the branch address generator. Also, the program counter address goes into our BAG. It's going to add those two together. So let's see, what's our immediate for this? It's -100. This is 120. So we're going to get the difference. We're going to get 20 out at the JAL output. Now, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but this branch address generator, it generates these outputs in parallel. Okay, just like the immediate generator generates its outputs in parallel. And what do we mean when we say parallel? That data is always there. It's continuously there. So how did you model those parallel outputs in the immediate generator? What did you use in the code? 5 assigned statements, exactly. Guess what? You're going to use assigned statements here too, but you only need 3, right? Because there's 3 outputs. And all you're going to do is assign each output to the 2 inputs that are getting added together, right? So this is going to be very simple code. It's 3 lines assigning an output to 2 things you're adding together. Okay, can't get much easier than that, right? Okay, so this goes over to the MUX. And it goes to input 3. So what is Good, erase that. What is PC source gonna be? 3. Right, that's gonna put 20 right here. And then what do we want PC write to be? 1. A 1. Right? So that's gonna write the new address to make the jump happen, right? We're jumping back in this case. But we're not done yet. We're not done with the data path yet because we have to save PC plus 4, right? That's the link. So also this instruction has a data path. Here, and notice the output of where we incremented the program counter output, which is the address of the of instruction. We'll notice that it goes back to this mux, whose output goes to the right data of the reg file. Right, this is the input that you need to put data on in order to write it to one of the reg file registers. Okay, so what do we want this select to be? 0, right? Because that's a 0 input, so it should be 0. That would put the PC plus 4 right here. And then what do we want reg write to be? A 1. Right? So that would actually write that data into register 16, which is our destination register. Okay, does that make sense? All right, we just got one more to go. We did this one. Okay, now we're gonna do this jump instruction. This is JALR. So it's JAL with an R. So L here still means link. Okay, so we're still going to say this PC plus 4 address with this instruction, just like we did with the previous one. But notice that this jump instruction has registers. Okay, what register is this? You look at the instruction, go to the manual.
Destination register?
Yep, that's the destination register. Okay, what register is this? RS1. Okay, also, let me at this time erase our data paths. The data paths can be slightly different than what we had for this. Look at this. We'll keep that the same. Oh, actually, no, let's just start. Okay, I'm just reviewing that like one point. Okay, get all this. Need like an all clear for our workflow. All that, all that, all that. Anything else? Oh, here. All right, I think I got every book. Nope. I think we're starting. We'll just start at 120 then. Oh, no. Well, I didn't put anything here, but we'll start at 120 like the previous. Okay, so this is a destination register, and again, the reason you need a destination register, just like we did here, is because we get the link, right? We want to say that PC plus 4 address. Now this is different. Okay. Here in parentheses we have a register, right? We're going to use the contents of this register, and then outside we have this number. Now, you've seen something like this in a previous instruction, not a jump instruction, but a different instruction earlier in the class. Remember seeing a number in front of something in parentheses? Remember what instruction? Like a store or a load. Right? And with a load or a store instruction, you take this number, you add it to what's inside the register, and then you use it as an address. Right? Remember that? Okay, with this instruction, you take this number, you add it to the contents of this register, but it's not an address, it's used as an immediate. Or actually, I'm sorry, I should say it's an offset. Okay, you'll see that this is the immediate. piece.
So quick question, so is JAL like you can jump somewhere else and then you immediately jump back to that instruction and go line by line or what?
So you're talking about here?
Yeah,
Which would be the same as this, the same concept. Again, what the link means is that we're putting the address of the instruction that's after JAL. Because yeah, after we're done with the jump, we might want to come back and start with the instruction after the JAL. So that's why we're saving PC plus 4, because that's the address of the instruction
So-
after this.
does that mean that the jump can only run one line of code in the jump and then it has to go back to the next line?
You mean where it jumps?
Yeah, so like it jumps and then it has to jump back after?
No, it could do a number of things and then jump back later. It's just that you have the address of that instruction saved in a register. So when you jump back, you would use that address.
Oh, so like that, the whatever stored in the register lets you, if you put it in like a J, it will just let you jump right back to the next address? Or the next instruction, I mean?
Well, are you just talking about just a jump instruction?
Like if you're done with, if you did some stuff after your job, but you wanted to jump back in the program again, you would use J and then X16.
Well, I don't know if there's a jump with just a register, but there's another one of these. Like you could, like like you were saying before, after you did whatever the jump instructions are, you want to come back to the instruction after this original JAL. You could use another one of these, make your destination register 0, right? Because you wouldn't care about that return address, and then just put 0, the register that you put this in. Like this could be 0x16, and that would take you there. Now there might be another way to do it, but that's one way I can think of. Okay. All right, but now let's go ahead and see what the data path is. So again, we start at the output of the program counter. Right, it's going to go to address 1 of our memory module. We want the read enable to be 1. That's going to put the instruction here at the output of our memory module. Now, what matters at the input of the reg file in this instruction? Does address 1 matter?
Yes.
Yep, because we have an RS1. And what number is going to be on address 1? 13. Does address 2 matter for this instruction? Nope, because we don't have an RS2. Does write address matter?
Yes.
Yes. And what's the number going to be? 31. Okay, and it comes down to our immediate. Now, what type of immediate does the JALR instruction have? Yeah, it's an I. Okay, so this is where the 80 is going to be. Okay, what is the output of RS1 going to be? 13. Yeah, whatever is in register 13. Right, we didn't give it a number, but we could give it some number if we wanted to. And then that comes down to an input of the branch address generator. So now what the branch address generator is going to do, it's going to take this I and add it to whatever contents are in that register. So the output of JALR is just going to be, in this case, 80 plus contents of register 13. Okay, and then that's going to come over to our MUX. So what would we want PC sort to be? 1. Right, so that will put, oops, that will put 80 plus register 13 contents ready to go into our program counter, and that will happen as long as PC write is a 1. Okay, but we also have the link, just like we did with JAL. So this would also be part of the data path. Right, to save that PC plus 4 address to, in this case, register 31. So we would want RF, select this RFWR, select B, a 0. So put the data on the right data input, and read write would have to be a what to write it? A 1. Okay? So I guess the main thing at this point, are you getting the hang of how you go from an instruction to what the data path is and what the control signals are? All right, because we've done 10 in class. And you did 2 as an activity, so you've done 12. There's probably another 20 to go, but a lot of those are going to be repetitive. Okay, now load instructions and store instructions are a little bit different. Okay, after the midterm, I don't know if it's control unit part 1 and part 2, but one of those classes will look at the data path for some of the load instructions. Remember I said that most instructions take 2 clock cycles to be processed, because most instructions, it's 1 cycle to get the instruction here at the output of the memory module, and then it's another clock cycle to get everything else to happen and get ready for the next instruction. But load instructions take 3 clock cycles, okay? And eventually we'll see the reason why, but that won't be till after the midterm.
What happened to register 31 on the data path?
Oh, it's right there, yeah, because we're writing to it, so it's on the right address. Yeah, sorry, that's not a very good degree, that's a, I'm sorry. Sometimes it's sloppy. Okay, any other questions? Because one more thing to go over before you can start working on what you need to work on, and that's just, I just want to briefly just go over what's left this quarter as far as the schedule and also what to do. Okay, now again, this is all on campus, but I just wanted to take some class time just to kind of, let you know where we're at, and if you have questions about it, I can ask questions. So anyway, as far as the schedule goes, next class Tuesday, remember the first hour class is the midterm. Again, you got to be here on time. If you come late, you're going to have less time to do it. If you miss it, it's a 0. After the midterm, I'll talk about arrays, arrays in assembly. And what you'll see when we talk about arrays, we'll finally talk about this data segment, the memory part. Right? Now we get the code segment where the instructions are, and then we get the data segment, and then the stack. Well, you'll see arrays is a way that you can put data into that data section of the memory. Okay, then there's going to be 2 lectures on the control unit. Okay, control unit, it takes the most time explaining, and it also takes the most time coding. Yeah, it's probably, the control unit is probably more code than you've written in all the modules up to this point put together. It's quite a bit that you have to do. Now, even though it's quite a bit that you have to do, it's not overly complicated. It's mainly nested, or, like one level of nesting of case statements, maybe like for some instructions a casing of if statements. Okay, but it's not that bad. It's quite a bit. Then after the control unit lecture, there's an auto wrapper lecture. The auto wrapper, that's the circuitry that goes around your CPU that interfaces your CPU to switches and LEDs and like the 7-segment display that's on your basis board. And then the last lecture is on the stack, what the stack segment is, and then also how to do subroutines in assembly. So that's on the 28th, the last day of February. Now, the third day of that week, this is the 8th week here. This is 28th and March 2nd, that's the 8th week of the quarter. March 2nd is an open lab. Okay, so that's, the lab will be open, of course, but you're not required to be here. In fact, like I said at the beginning of the quarter, this is a blended class where the first 15 or so meetings are in person. The last 5 are online in the sense that I'm available on Zoom. And you just have time to work on your assignments that you haven't finished, and also to work on the software final project and the hardware final project. Okay, there's no new material after March or after February 28th. Okay. So the 9th week, that's when you should be working on your software final project. The 10th week, and you'll probably have to do some work on that the 9th week too. The software final project is probably going to be less time-wise than the hardware final project. The hardware final project involves getting your auditor to work. Okay, and that can be quite a chore. Okay, no matter how well that you simulated each module, and no matter how well you connected all the modules together, you're gonna have mistakes. Okay, when I put my auditor together, I had mistakes. When Dr. Hummel put his audit together, he had mistakes. When Dr. Benson put hers together, she had mistakes, okay? A lot of times it's like silly mistakes, you know, just like stuff you just overlooked, maybe looking something up at the wrong number of bits or something like that. Other times it can be like logical stuff that it seemed okay when you simulated it, but for some reason it wasn't quite right. It's causing everything not to work. Okay, so expect that you'll have to troubleshoot. Now, as you know, the assignments have been two-person groups. For the software final project, it's gonna remain two-person groups, so unless you tell me, I'm just gonna assume that you're staying with the same person that you've been doing other assignments with for the final software project. The final hardware project, that's the one where you can be in a group up to 4 people. Okay, so like if you're in a group of 2 and you know another group of 2 and you want to form a group of 4, that's fine. A group of 3 is fine. A group of 2 is fine. Like if you and your partner just want to be your own group, that's also fine. I would highly not recommend a single person doing it though. For a single person to do it, it's a lot. Like I said, I'm pretty experienced now. I've been learning the nuances of the otter, but you know, I've dealt with microprocessors before. You know, I've done assembly language even though it was a while ago, and I have to get back up to speed with this particular set. But you know, it took me a while. I'm not gonna lie. It's not easy. Okay, and I don't want to give you any false ideas or anything. It's tough. Okay, but that's why I'm allowing up to 4 people. Okay, and then during finals week, there is a test during the university day and time, but it's just an online true false. Should be nothing to stress out about type of test. Okay. So anyway, that's the schedule. Now, as far as things left that are due, here's the dates. Again, this is all on Canvas, but I wanted to point out particularly this right here. Last class, as I said, I made the ALU and the immediate generator due after the midterm instead of this Friday. Okay, and I didn't do that because these are overly complicated. I did that because, you know, if you get into a time crunch, you know, and you're getting close to the midterm, well, the midterm should be that priority, right? So if you get into a time crunch, you'll still have some time after the midterm to turn it in without being late. Okay, but still work on it because the ALU and the immediate generator, that's due Wednesday, the day after the midterm. The branch condition generator and the branch address generator, they're due the Friday of that week. So just 2 days later, they're due. And then arrays, which is going to be the software assignment that goes with the lecture after the midterm, that's due the day after the 3-day weekend. That's due on the 21st. Okay, Monday is a holiday, it's President's Day. So look, right here after the midterm, you have 3 assignments due within a week. All right, so that's why don't wait until Wednesday to start these. You know, hopefully, if you don't finish before the midterm, at least you'll be almost done, and hopefully crank it out on that Wednesday. Okay, and then after that, after these 3, things are spaced out basically a week apart. Actually, this hardware 6, this is due 2 weeks after we talk about the control unit. Okay, because you can't do hardware 6 until you have a good idea of what the control unit entails. Right, hardware 6 is like a small portion of your final project. Okay, hardware 6, we give you a program that's 6 instructions long, and we just want you to do the control unit for those 6 instructions. All right, and then hardware 7, which is the final project, that's making your auto work for all instructions. Okay, so it's kind of like a baby step and then a big leap. If you hopefully not over a cliff. Okay, so you can see, you know, there's 2 weeks. You got basically 2 weeks for hardware 6, and then, you know, the next week is when the software final project is due, and then the week after that, which is the last day of the quarter, well, last day of classes of the quarter, that's when the final project is due. And then, like I said, there is an online true false final during the day and time that the university decides. Okay, I have no control over when the final is. That's the school, and I can't make it any different. It has to be those hours. I don't know, I'll have to look. Does anyone know what the hours or the day and the hours for this class is? Some Tuesday or some Thursday of that week, but I don't know what the time is. Okay, so do you have any questions about anything? Yep.
That's good questions. Is it gonna be normal schedule?
Say that again?
It's gonna be normal schedule.
On what?
After the break.
Oh, yeah, they do the Monday schedule like after Martin Luther's Day there, but yeah, the Tuesday after President's Day is a normal Tuesday. Yeah, I'm sure glad it is, because if we lost another class, it would be really hard to finish any of this. I mean, one thing, because we lost 2 classes, one to the holiday, one to the storm, unfortunately, we won't be able to get the interrupts. That's just, because the thing is, if I talk about interrupts, then there's another assignment on interrupts, then there's additional circuitry you would have to do in the Otter. And I just feel as though with the time we have, that's just asking too much. Okay, so if you want to learn about interrupts, I do have my notes that I can make available. Okay, so you're not responsible for interrupts.
Please, yeah.
Please, yes,
Make them available.
oh, yeah, sure, I will make them available. Well, send me an email just to remind me. Yep, I will do that. Okay, so, question.
So for the midterms, it's all like multiple choice true false. Do you have like examples of like problems on Canvas, or how would you?
Well, there's no problems. It's multiple choice true false. Like I said previously, I would look at my notes on Canvas. See, these are my notes for today, and they're all on Canvas. Like all these diagrams are on there. But no, it's true false types questions, so there's no problems. Yeah, if I had a test of problems, it would be a longer. A question? I can give you one by the end of class. I can't think of one off the top of my head.
For the midterm, if they're gonna be like questions, tracing data.
No, you won't have to trace data. Now, knowing how to do it might help you answer a question, but yeah, it's not gonna be like I give you a diagram and tell you to trace out instructions. I don't know how I would make that multiple choice.
Will we have an Otter diagram for the midterm, just to look at?
Oh, that's a good question. I wasn't planning on that. I mean, if during the test, there was a question where you think that might help, I would consider it, but it depends on what my intention was for that particular question. But I did not put the test together thinking somebody would have a diagram. Yeah, the other thing is, you can bring a calculator. I don't think most people would need a calculator because there's not much to calculate. But, if you wanted to use a calculator for something, you could.
Oh, yes, about the like Otter, so. I'm confused by, at core, the outline, it's supposed to be the location of the data.
You're talking about the output of the program counter?
Yeah,
Well, the output of the program counter gives us the address of the instruction to be executed. So the reason for the +4 is because the instruction and information. Your first instruction.
Don't automatically go back, you have
so why is it?
Yes, that's.
Well, because for these 2 instructions that have the L, and what the L means is a link.
Probably gonna give us more like.
That address that after. So whatever address, like say there's instruction with that address 8. The next instruction after will be at address 8. So what both of these instructions do is we take that address 84 and save it. save it into a register that you specify that nature. But just like instructions on Tuesday, any instructions on that's that you're gonna write. So, you know, it says WD on data, the data information.
You're writing the location of the address.
When you say address, then you the register that address specifies. But the address is the number that identifies the register data actually used for the card. Again, the analogy of registry. Let's say, erase all the stuff. There was names every thing. They were all names.
When you have the
So
instructions,
those are
it
like,
sound like you just like
never. Like, yeah. That's all. This is address one.
But
So the
say
number on the
with
mailbox is the
if you don't wanna find
number
it,
that mailbox against all other mailboxes. So the address of the register
Here it is.
is the number that identifies that register from all the other. Now, we might ask it. So like what we put here. Right into the register, that's like the mail. This is like the number on the mailbox. That help?
Yes, so then what's the register?
The mailbox is the register, the mail is the number on the mailbox.
Do we have to put the table or anything?
Say that again now.
No, so it was different.
Number and purpose?
For which one?
Simon Page, this part where
No, I put it.
we have.
I'll have to look at it. I don't remember. Let me look at it. Sorry. It's been a while.